Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Beyond the Ropes. The latest news reports have circulated that Lawrence Okolie has been found with adverse findings following a VADA test ahead of his heavyweight clash against Tony Yoko. It was scheduled to take place in Paris this weekend, so just a few days before the fight itself. Now, Queensberry released a statement, which I'm going to read to you. So they said that last night, the Voluntary Anti-Doping Association, known as VADA, informed Queensberry that Lawrence Okolie returned an adverse finding following an anti-doping test conducted ahead of the show in Paris this Saturday. Obviously, this puts the fight, at jeopardy in terms of the fight card and Tony Yoko potentially facing somebody. But what I really want to focus on today is what Lawrence has commented in response to that. So Lawrence has said, "Before anyone starts imagining the worst, following my bicep injury last year, I sustained an elbow injury on the same arm during this camp. I had a treatment on it, and now here we are. I truly hope sense prevails." He followed up saying, "I will, of course, be fully cooperating with all relevant authorities, and I'm confident any investigation will clear my name. I won't be making any further comment at this time. Thank you all for your support." Now, Laurie, you've been around the sport for a long time. And typically in the sense of, the law and justice, we do say innocent until proven guilty. But I want to get your view on this. What do you make of Lawrence's response to the adverse findings?
You know what? I'm going to start by answering a question with a question, if I may, Melissa. Very, very simple question, one which I already know the answer, but I'm going to answer it anyway. Have you ever heard a fighter, when they've been accused of taking or having an adverse finding in his system, come out and admit and say, "You know what, fair cop, you got me, yeah, I'm guilty"?
No, of course not, no.
And that is why I'm always suspicious. And like you said, Melissa, you are technically innocent until proven guilty. However, when it comes to PEDs in boxing especially, I kind of look at it the reverse. To me, you're kind of guilty until you can prove yourself innocent. Because unfortunately now, boxing's becoming rife with this type of stuff. And listen, I'm not automatically saying Okolie's guilty, but I am very suspicious because, as I said to you off camera, and I'm going to say on camera, and listen, this is even with me, got to declare a bit of an interest because I've met Lawrence Okolie in Dubai, I've met him in the UK, had pictures taken with him, seems like a really nice guy. However, I have to push all that aside and say, listen, I do find it a little suspicious that Lawrence, who's been boxing now for a long, long time, he was a top amateur, he was on the GB squad. We know that they get educated about stuff like this. Why is it now that you're in a, let's face it, a very high profile, some would say 50-50 fight, some would say actually Yoka's favourite. But anyway, he's in a high profile fight, big fight, and all of a sudden you tested positive or you got an adverse finding in your system. When you were fighting some of the lesser opponents, the Tetes of this world and some of the Hungarian and Polish guys that you're bowling over, there was never an issue. Now all of a sudden, you're in this high profile fight, you pop dirty, a little suspicious.
Stinks, doesn't it?
It does stink.
It
doesn't
stink.
pass the smell test.
Doesn't pass the smell test.
And listen, again, I'm not saying that he's guilty, but I am suspicious. And another reason why I'm suspicious, because it's becoming far too prevalent in boxing now, isn't it?
Do you know what? For me, I think the bit that I find curious and curiouser is the fact that boxers, I know boxers. And I've been friends with boxers, and the amount of diligence that they apply to looking at everything that they're putting in their body. If they're, using supplements, are they labeled under informed sports, because informed sports make sure that they're in line with all of the VADA and UCAD restrictions, etc. So we've all seen that at play. Now we're talking about an elite professional boxer. You're telling me, I'm not saying anything, too distinct about it, but I find it odd that someone at that level with that amount of professionalism and being that elite in the sport wouldn't have that level of diligence.
That's what I'm saying. I mean,
over any treatments that he might be receiving for this bicep and elbow injury on the same arm. It just feels a bit odd to me.
It does. It's very suspicious. I mean, like I said, Lawrence Okolie boxed for the UK, he boxed for GB in the Olympics. I know for a fact that they get very educated on what to take and what not to take. anything you're taking, you should be cleared by the relevant drug testing authorities. If this fight comes under the auspices of VADA, and you've been given something to take for your shoulder injury, whatever injury it is, what would be the first thing you do?
Yeah. Is it VADA cleared?
Yeah, you would actually get in contact and say, look, my doctor's prescribed this. I just want to make sure. Lawrence will know this.
Yeah, he will. And also the other thing I think, I feel quite strongly about actually is that ultimately, it is whether you took something because of an injury or not, it is your responsibility,
Strict
whatever
liability.
you put in your body.
Great point.
And I felt the same way when Connor ate too many eggs, I'll be honest, I really did. But do you know what? This kind of, for me, feels like a wider problem, and one that you've definitely pointed towards when we've had this conversation, which is that PEDs are so prevalent in boxing, and we don't need to look too far backwards to start listing off people who've been found with adverse findings. Joseph Parker recently with the recreational drug finding. Was that because he was sniffing cocaine, or was it because he was masking other things in his body? Conor Benn, the egg situation. Actually, you told me earlier.
Yeah, I did. I was chatting to a journalist friend of mine, and he was saying that fighters who tend to dye their hair a lot, i.e. the blonde bombshell, apparently the peroxide and the substances in the hair dye can be a masking agent. Now, I'm not saying that the aforementioned person is doing stuff, but I'm just telling you what I heard. I'll tell you another thing that I heard that I'm sure you've heard. I'm sure you have heard this. If you speak to boxers, right, you chat to any boxer and you mention PEDs, a lot of the times their first response will be, oh, they're all on it.
Yeah.
That's what. Oh, they're all on it. You'll be surprised, Laurie. It goes right to the top.
Yeah.
So when I hear Lawrence has popped dirty, I'm automatically suspicious.
Yeah.
Is he guilty of knowingly taking? Because listen, he can't deny it. There is an adverse finding in his system, so that we know is true. What you also said about strict liability is true. You are responsible for what goes in your system.
100%.
That being said, though, there's so many fighters that I talk to, so many people in the industry, they will say, listen, man, you're not aware of how wide scale the problem is. Literally all of these, if not all, most of them are on something.
Yeah,
so,
I've heard the same thing. And I've heard a lot about how, different gyms, very specific gyms are all on different substances, and how they cycle out the
cycle on and off.
Yeah, cycle on and off.
Microdosing.
Exactly, in order to evade the tests that are being done. And, that is concerning. It's really concerning. And also from the other side of it, not to give any, credit to people on it or whatever, because I don't agree with it at all. You're getting in the ring, it's a very dangerous sport. You're putting people's lives at risk when you're giving yourself an advantageous edge. However, I imagine that if you're a boxer and you're on the up and you're hearing all of these other boxers are on it and they're all cycling on and off and they're not being found out, I guess the temptation is there to also give yourself that edge.
Exactly.
And so credit to the boxers who stay away from it.
I'd love to know what percentage of them that don't.
Yeah.
Because from what I'm hearing, the percentage that do is high. And you make another great point. Boxing, this is not running. This is not athletics. It's not running faster a split second, you know what I mean? Or jumping higher or longer. People are getting hurt in it. This is the hurt business. People can get hurt. I mean, you saw at the weekend, Melissa, unfortunately, Shadeja Green.
Oh, yeah.
Shout out to Shadeja Green. She's doing a lot better now, but she had a bleed on her brain.
Yeah.
Might be the end of her career. I know she's talking about coming back to boxing, but I would imagine that's unlikely. But anyway, the point, I'm not saying for 1 second that her opponent was on stuff, but what I'm saying, these are the dangers of boxing, what can happen. So when you have guys that are roided up to the gills or on this extracurricular stuff and makes them stronger, faster, can punch harder, can last more rounds, you're endangering your opponent.
Yeah.
So it's a real serious problem. So
do you think that boxers who have been found with adverse findings should receive a life ban?
Yeah, maybe not a life ban, because depending on the substance they took and the circumstances, Because I do, listen, we've got to be honest as well and say some people may inadvertently make a mistake. So there are grades of cheating, aren't there? I mean, if something's found in your system, you're cheating, whether you like it or not. So I do accept and agree with the concept of strict liability. However, there are some guys that are blatant cheats. They employ S&C coaches, and S&C coaches come to them and say, look, I can get you faster, stronger. If you take this, don't worry about failing the test. We can microdose you and cycle off. And they have these conversations with the boxers, and the boxers sign up to it.
But then
there are other guys who may take an over-the-counter supplement or something, maybe what's happened with Lawrence, and it's found to have had something in there. But you are, at the end of the day, you are responsible for what goes in your system. So I am in favour, maybe not of life bans. I'm in favour of life bans for persistent cheats, your Jarrell Millers and
but
people like that.
how can you be certain? Like, if you are an organization like VADA or UCAD or whatever, how can you be certain that someone has involuntarily taken it?
You can't.
That's the thing.
That's why the strict liability rule is in place.
Right.
And that is why strict sentences have to be meted out, whether it's micro doses or big doses or an over-the-shop counter Lemsip that was found to have something in there, against somebody that's blatantly on some weird drug that's been produced in a lab. Stiff sentences need to be meted out.
Yeah, and I do think there just needs to be more consistency across the board, because I feel that in certain instances, we see boxers who face bans for whatever amount of times. In other instances, things get pushed under the rug.
Oh, yeah, hell yeah.
You know, so
look
many
out with
times.
Canelo.
Exactly. Fury.
That was disgraceful. Fury.
Yeah.
I
mean, so many different examples of this, right?
And then even some of the punishments. I mean, the ban that Canelo got, in effect, wasn't even a ban because the guy only fights twice a year.
Exactly.
So giving him a 6-month ban, that just meant...
Yeah. Oh, okay. It's just
6 months.
Normal.
I'll be back in November. So it's disgusting, the whole way this thing is being prosecuted. And that's why I'm in favour of stiff penalties. So regardless of what Lawrence says... Now, listen, Lawrence, if you're watching this, you may feel I'm, you know what I mean, throwing shade on you, or I'm not being loyal or whatever. No. You were found with an adverse finding in your system. You should get a heavy ban for that. The mitigating circumstances can be taken into account, but on a scale of 1 to 10, you should get a stiff ban.
Yeah. I'm inclined to agree with you, Laurie. I really am. I think that, you know, PEDs are a big problem in boxing.
Big problem.
And I think that we have these regulatory bodies, and they should actually work consistently with each other to, you know, to deal with these problems in a way that is fair across the board, as opposed to some boxers facing certain punishments and others facing other punishments. But guys, listen, we are really intrigued to hear from you guys. What do you think? Do you agree with us? Do you think it's more of a guilty until proven innocent situation? Or do you think that actually it could very well be the case that Lawrence had no idea what was going on? Let us know in the comments. And as always, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more content. Share, like, and we will catch you on the next episode of Beyond the Ropes.